Hey Lillian, I'm so glad you were able to join us. I hope we're not keeping you away from class or from your studies.
No, ma'am. My term technically starts today, but the classes that I'm taking specifically start next week now that I have kind of more information about the specific classes. So I was relieved to find out that I could attend both.
Mr. Chair, you now have a quorum.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everybody for attending the meeting today. And let's begin with a roll call. Courtney, do you have the list of members?
I do. Would you like for me to call roll?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So, Mr. Randall Brown,
Here.
Miss Brenda Casse, Miss Lillian Dejan,
Here.
thank you. Miss Michelle Guillory,
Here.
thank you. Dr. Hyacinth McKee, I think she's actually running a little late. Mr. Stephen Wynn, nope. Miss Bambi Polizzola,
Here.
thank you. Mr. Chris Rodriguez,
Here.
thank you. Miss Tamisha Sonye,
Here.
thank you. And Miss Mary Tarver, no, okay. So with 6 members present, you have a quorum, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you all for your attendance today. It's appreciated. And welcome to our guest. And then now we need a motion to approve the minutes from well, I need to read the ground rules, don't I? Or we do? Okay. You want to put those up on the screen so the public can see those as well, please? And I'll read them. Stephen says he's here. He was waiting to be let in. So he's present also. Thank you, Stephen, and welcome. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the mission statement for the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council is as follows: to increase independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion for Louisianans with developmental disabilities by engaging in advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. And finally, today's ground rules for the meeting. Our members must be recognized by the chair before speaking. Please be respectful of each other's opinions. We break for 10 minutes every hour and a half. Discuss council business in a responsible manner. Except as necessary, please restrict the use of electronic communication. Silence and turn off your cell phones where appropriate. The mission statement is posted at every meeting. Please be on time for meetings. No alphabets, so when we start using acronyms, let's be mindful that not everyone knows what that acronym might mean. So let's try to use the full titles and not abbreviations. Side conversations are to be kept to a minimum, done quietly and restricted to the subject at hand. Those are the rules for today's meeting. Now, I believe we need to approve the minutes from the July meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? If everybody needs a minute to look over them, they are linked in the agenda. I'll allow a moment for everyone to take a look at those. I'll entertain a motion. In a moment. Welcome, Mary. We're reviewing the minutes from our last meeting, which I believe was in July.
Okay,
So if you have not reviewed those, you can take a minute to review them if you like.
I have looked over them.
And then I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you, Bambi. I believe that, okay, thank you. So we have a motion to approve from Bambi and a second from Mary. Do I have any objections? I should have asked for extension. Do I have any abstentions? Do I have any objections? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, and so Courtney, could we put the agenda back up on the screen for the public to see? Thank you. All right, so we want to discuss the results of the Developmental Disability Network collaboration meeting. Would you like to brief us on that, Courtney?
Yes, hi, thank you. So I was able to meet with Chris Rodriguez of Disability Rights Louisiana and Dr. Phil Wilson of LSU HDC Human Development Center. And since those are our partner agencies or sister agencies within the DD network, we wanted to go over the information that was revealed in the public forum report and from the public input survey, and just kind of touch base on the recurring themes that we discovered in those through that information. And we kind of asked questions such as, are there any activities or initiatives that the public is requesting that Disability Rights or Human Development Center are already addressing? If there was public input received indicating activities or initiatives that Disability Rights or Human Development Center can assume responsibility for addressing individually. And also what activities the DD Council can collaborate with Disability Rights and Human Development to help achieve desired outcomes. And we also asked the other sister agencies what recommendations they had for you guys, for this committee, to consider moving forward with developing the council's next 5-year plan. So I have emailed this report to each of the committee members. If you would like for me to read each of those talking points, I can. If not, we can move forward.
I think that would be helpful for the discussion for our public members who didn't get the report. If you could just read the points.
Absolutely. So many requests were made for provider agencies to be held to a higher degree of accountability, and Disability Rights felt like they are already taking matters to address this concern. And please, Mr. Rodriguez, please feel chime in if you'd like to contribute to some of this since you were a part of this.
Absolutely, Chris. If you have something to add since you were part of that meeting.
In regards to lack of recreational inclusion and accessibility, there had been previous activities that were conducted to train Parks and Recreation personnel on inclusion of individuals with disabilities in events that were being conducted. Human Development Center currently has a program addressing inclusive childcare practices, but more developments are needed in this area. The DD Council is currently and has been funding a program providing sexual abuse, exploitation, and relationship training to individuals with developmental disabilities and parent caregivers. All DD network entities have been participating in a collaboration with the Office of Behavioral Health and Louisiana Rehab Services towards service integration among individuals with developmental disabilities and mental health co-occurring conditions. So these were all things that we felt that we're already addressing through one party or another, not necessarily just the DD Council, but some faction of the DD network is already addressing these concerns. Something that Disability Rights felt that they could take on responsibility for, or they could address themselves individually, is to continue their efforts with increasing outreach within their benefits planning and client assistant programs, and will continue monitoring Louisiana Rehab Services for compliance with regulations as established by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. Collaboration activities that were recommended or suggested included training initiatives for direct service professionals and families, helping to create rewarding career pathways for direct service professionals. And as a DD network, appeal to the new Department of Education Superintendent, Dr. Cade Brumley, and express our desire of wanting to jointly serve as allies and share resources regarding students with disabilities. Then trying to strive for better outcomes of students with disabilities, ensure that each district has a special education advisory panel, and through the council have Families Helping Families help navigate parents, and then with Disability Rights help support more facilitators. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Then with regard to responding during natural disasters, use lessons learned after Hurricane Katrina to make recommendations as a network to all appropriate state agencies. Excuse me, hold on just a moment. Then other recommendations that were referenced during the meeting for this committee to take into consideration is to refocus on what is impacting the quality of life for individuals with developmental disabilities. Maximize the use of tools already established and available. Create a consolidated system to apply for housing instead of having to apply at all the separate housing authorities or entities. Assist with the establishment of universal playgrounds. Inclusive childcare practices should have more of a universal design and support classrooms for all ranges of disabilities. There is a danger of segregation in not doing so, and focus should be on demonstrated coaching methods or models and not just training. Empower parents of children with disabilities regarding individualized education plans. Helping them become more knowledgeable will increase their advocacy efforts on behalf of their student. And then focus on specific types of exploitation each year so that generic topics can be addressed over the course of 5 years, or to round out the trainings. For example, 1 year could be sexual exploitation, the next would be healthy relationships, then financial exploitation, and then financial literacy, to kind of round it out and not just be about the abuse and exploitation. So that's what we came up with during that report or during that meeting. And thank you again to Mr. Rodriguez for participating in that meeting, and Dr. Wilson, which I don't know that he's on this meeting.
Sure. Thank you all for your work, Dr. Wilson and Chris Rodriguez. You're here today, Chris, so if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free.
No, I think that was a really good summary and report that Courtney put together, and certainly does reflect a pretty robust conversation that we had on just what our individual entities are doing and trying to identify areas where our efforts could be magnified by collaborating. So I think
Absolutely. And we thank you, sir,
Yeah.
for that
Discussion.
participation. Okay, so does the committee have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Tanisha, you have the floor.
Um, I just thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, possibly for Chris, Mr. Rodriguez, regarding how could, with there being questions of accountability, how can we be more effective at what we're doing to ensure the accountability? If there are questions that, there's some areas with that, what could we do differently if we are holding those people accountable? Is there any data that we can go by to show that there's a difference or that we've improved those strategies or anything like that, to ensure that, since there is some question about it?
Right. About what topic specifically?
Different training initiatives, resources, education, just basically all those, because I'm not sure exactly. It kind of sounds like the public had some issues about accountability. So just hearing what, Ms. Courtney said, just looking at it from a perspective of maybe that being an area where we need to look at what guidelines are we using to hold people accountable. Just like we said, we're looking and monitoring those. I'm gonna just say, as a board member, I don't want to say that that's just enough to come to the table and say we're monitoring those areas. What data do we have to show the public that we're actually doing that work? To say, here's something we did this year compared to last year, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think a lot of nonprofits and certainly kind of quasi-governmental entities that take on a lot of money to produce something have struggled with the difference between, like, I think it's pretty evident that the council, when they say we're going to do 5 trainings on sexual harassment, people with developmental disabilities or sexual assault in the year, let's say 2021, it's pretty easy to see and hold them accountable as to whether or not those took place. I think they report out pretty frequently. Now, what's more difficult to determine is, as a result of doing those things, did anything change, right? And I think that's really what it's all about. And, I struggle with this at our organization. We do a ton of work, but at the end of the day, did we do a ton of outreach only to gain nothing from it? So I think maybe that's a larger question. I don't know if organizations kind of at the end of things, and I think the DD Council is pretty good about this. I mean, there should be, and if you're really involved in doing trainings as an example, and I think the DD Council does do this, I mean, making sure you're putting out evaluations, at the end of, was this helpful? Did you learn anything? How might you now go, provide this information to others in the network? I think, monitoring the DD Councils, there's tons of metrics that they probably have access to determine, on their social media, are they increasing the number of individuals that are clicking on their posts and how many posts are going on? So I think, asking for those types of reports is good. The DD Council is under a similar structure as we are. So they have things called PPRs, performance, what are they called? Project performance reports. They're due annually to our federal funders. And those go over, at least in ours, I haven't seen the DD Councils, and I'm sure it's very similar, extreme detail about what has been accomplished. And I don't know that that document is really ever, we don't give them specifically to our board members unless they ask for them all over ours are gigantic booklets. I mean, hundreds of pages of reporting on what we said we were going to do during the year, what we did during the year, if we didn't meet a benchmark, why, the things we were successful, what were the outcomes? I mean, all that information is out there. I think maybe, this is, it's a lift to a certain extent, but that's due at the end of every calendar year. Is that the same for you guys, Courtney? Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to, that is your Bible of what took place over the year. And that's what you give to your primary funder, the federal government, to show these are the outcomes in terms of the money that you gave us. So maybe, you know, once a year, them presenting that document to you might be, or to a committee or to the board or the council, could be helpful. That could be one of the ways that you monitor as well. But I think, you know, having sat on many of the committees, I think they do a pretty good job of reporting out. But again, the big question is, like, I have no doubt if the DD Council says we'll do 5 trainings this year, that they do them well. The hard part is, like, what happened as a result of that.
Right. I thank you, because that's exactly what I was going along. Because I think more of the from what I see at times, we're worried about whether or not those trainings are effective, because that's my thing. You know, we meet the guidelines of doing them, but then the public sees a different thing about whether or not those trainings are being effective, because that's the only way to monitor whether or not the money we're spending and what we're doing is actually, you know, reaching those outcomes. So I think that's a great idea.
And we can certainly put
Thank you.
together a summary of those activities and annually present. We'll figure out a format to best annually present to the council. So you have that information, or a synopsis of that information for programming. We'll take a look at ways to do that as well, so that information is available to the council. And of course, I know we will continue, as we have always done, we will continue to ask participants, you know, what their feedback is as they attend the trainings or meetings. That has been invaluable in my experience, to whether or not we get real-time responses from people who attended. You know, what did you receive from, what did you learn from the gain from this training? That's been helpful before, and we'll continue to do that. I'm positive of that. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Sonia.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, so those were some pretty good recommendations from our partner agencies. Does anybody have any other feedback they'd like to share from what they've heard today? Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, I think the recommendations are good. I think everyone who participated in getting those worked out, I would urge us to consider them strongly as we put together today's plans. So Courtney, would you like to give us a little guidance here on what you best would need from us to get the process started today?
Sure, but before that, I see Miss Lillian Dejon has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Lillian, you have the floor.
I just wanted to let y'all know that we have a couple questions from Miss Liz Gary.
Oh,
And-
okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Liz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Randall, and thank you, Lillian. I actually just put it in the chat. I was just wondering if the reports that Chris was referring to for the federal partners, if that can be found online anywhere, those reportings that he was referring to, that the councils and the HDCs and disability rights have to submit.
Well, Ms. Cheryl Metney is with us today, and she's with one of our federal partners. And so let's ask Ms. Cheryl, where might we find these reports, Ms. Cheryl?
That is the most interesting question of the day, as Chris probably got a similar email that Courtney got, where the federal government has suspended its online data collection system. So there is no place for everything's been submitted for the last couple of years in this online system, and the federal government just announced they are no longer operating that system, and we have no information and probably won't for 2 or 3 weeks until they decide how they're going to get everybody's information out of this system they're no longer supporting. So right now we don't know. We don't know where the reports are housed. We don't know how councils and P&As and independent living centers will access their reports. I hate to deliver that kind of message because, you know, it's not a good message, but the federal government is exploring other options is the official word. Chris, I'm looking to you for confirmation that you received a very similar email.
Right, from ACL. Yeah, I don't know if you guys experienced the same complete like cluster situation we did last year. Basically, the federal government hired a new firm to put together like the portal system and how to report and everything. It's a new entity and they launched it last year and it was just a complete mess. It was not a good functional portal and a lot of money was spent on it. I suspect somebody up high said basically, you screwed this up and now we're taking this responsibility away from you, ACL, and we're going to have somebody else do it because you did not do it anywhere near a satisfactory way. But Cheryl, also, I'm basing the information that's in the DD Council's PPRs on my experiences. Do you want to tell the folks who probably have never heard of the term PPR specifically for the DD Council is inside those documents?
Yes, it is a very detailed report. It's on average 200 pages, but it basically it is your annual work plan that I know you guys actually, the Louisiana Council uses their annual work plan, so I think you're familiar with it. And each year, so it's October 1st through September 30th. Each year, every council, all 56, must give a detailed accounting of the activities that were conducted during that time period. And it includes everything from a description of the activities to the number of people with developmental disabilities and their families, as well as other stakeholders who participated in those activities. And then it asks for a detailed accounting of the evaluation of those activities. So, and that comes in various forms. It could be the number of people who indicated they got increased knowledge. It could be the number of people who were active in educating policymakers about a policy agenda item of the council's. So it takes very different forms. The federal performance measures must be included, a description of your activities and the impact on people with developmental disabilities and their families. Recognizing that if it's a systems change activity you guys council was engaged in, there may not be great results in the early stages because those activities tend to build upon each other as you go through the plan. And every year, the feds, you have an assigned federal project officer, reviews your report in detail, usually sends questions or points of clarification back. This year, they really focused on financial information because that's part of the report, and whether or not councils are obligating their money in a timely fashion and spending their money in a timely fashion. So that's been a big piece there. And also looking at cultural diversity efforts, overall efforts the councils are making to address the needs of people with DD and their families from diverse backgrounds. So we have, as quickly, I'm trying to get answers out of your funding source as well. We need to know where your reports are so that you guys can have access to them, because you, in good faith, put your stuff in a system that they're not using, I guess. Just it's a little silly, but that's all I know.
So will you notify Courtney as soon as you are aware of the mess they have untangled and how we are to proceed with gathering and getting that data?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because
We're all anxious. We're all anxious,
sure, and that's understandable, but we are accountable to our public as to what we're doing and how, and these reports are a big part of how we prove what we're doing and
I
how
also
we.
think, though, I'm pretty sure I've been to some of your council meetings, and you guys do report on
Yes,
activities of your projects and your grantees. And all of
indeed.
that information is public. And
Yes,
so at a minimum, you are getting quarterly progress reports on your investments. And so anytime
yes,
the council chooses to fund something, the feds really consider that an investment. And then you guys are tracking that over the course of the year. And at the end of the year, the report that Chris is talking about is the compilation of all of your quarterly information.
yes,
Right. And if there was anything, I mean, like Cheryl said, they go back and forth. You have to, clarify things and blah, blah, blah. And if there are over multiple years, or even if you have a bad year, if there's something wrong, you will get audited. And there's no way the DD Council could be audited without the council being aware of it. And they will come in and turn your life upside down and figure out what's going on and make sure you're doing everything right. When is the last time Louisiana's DD Council got audited? It also happens like randomly too. You don't have to necessarily have done something wrong.
Mr. Rodriguez, please do not jinx us.
Right, I know, right? Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Sorry. I'm sure it's been a long.
Yeah, Louisiana, it's been over a decade, if not more, for a review. And now they call it a quality review system. And if there were, they can choose to do a number of things to look. They can look at you specifically. They can look at you all of the above. They can look at you at the total programmatic and fiscal. So right now, I think you've had a little bit of a taste of it over membership.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons we did come in and try to really educate and do some TA around membership so that it would not get to be a bigger deal. If you can handle it through technical assistance, they like to do that without putting it in the formal federal agency system. So that's the design.
Okay, thank you. And as Cheryl rightly pointed out, and Chris has as well, we are responsible, whether the federal government has their system operational or not, their collection system, we are collecting the data, we are doing the work, and we do report it out, what we're doing. And so when you attend our meetings, you'll get report of what we're doing and how on these various areas. Okay, Courtney, would you like to give us some guidance on moving forward with today's planning activities?
Sure, and I will also like to call upon Ms. Cheryl Matney to interject whenever she feels the need to do so. Okay, so during the last meeting, you guys came up with some language or came up with some ideas for goals and objectives and targeted disparities and implementation strategies. And you asked for staff to kind of put it into a language where it's very, very similar to what we already have on our work plans, on our action plans. So this document that I'm sharing now and that was sent to all of the committee members, that's what this document is. So if you would like to go through it and let's possibly narrow down what you feel is highest priority. Again, this committee has chosen to try to target all 9 areas of emphasis.
Before you move forward on that, let me say that although I understand and I have great respect that all of these issues are important, I think it is essential that we begin to look at how we can consolidate and choose to focus our efforts on, I would say, no more than 4 areas of emphasis. Even though it's a 5-year plan, we have a lot of work to do to carry it out. And of course, we do have a staff shortage at present, which we do expect to remain an issue for this year and possibly into part of next year. And so we have to take that into account as well. And I would strongly urge that we begin to look at ways to target our energy and effort on no more than 4 areas of emphasis would be my recommendation, preferably 3 would be my recommendation to the committee today. But continue, Courtney.
Sure. Okay. And also just to clarify, just because we have a certain number of goals doesn't mean that each goal can only address one area of emphasis. So I wanted to make sure that was evident with you guys as well. Oh, sorry. Okay, so for health, as you can see, this is what was recommended and the targeted disparity that you guys came up with. So I'm wondering if the best way of possibly narrowing down the goals will be for the committee to go ahead and decide the number of goals that you want to try to achieve. And then we can focus on the areas of emphasis. So if you guys decide on just 3, then we'll know which 3 that or which ones we feel are in the top 3. If you guys want to decide on 4 or 5 goals, then we can narrow it down.
I actually like that recommendation. I'd like some feedback from the committee members. The reason I suggest, 9 is very ambitious. I think California, and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they have 7? And they have a much larger budget and staff than we do. But
Yeah,
so
they have $7 million a year, and this year they turned in 3 goals,
right.
or that's what they're proposing. But one of the strategies is, just as Courtney was talking about, councils do pretty much one of 2 things. You can go very issue specific, like healthcare or employment, or you can make a goal statement that it's a little broader and it encompasses other things, like a goal could be that individuals with developmental disabilities will have the services and supports, will have increased services and supports in their community to live self-determined lives. And then underneath something like that, you could address employment, housing, whatever your some of your more objective, focused items would be, but all of that then reaching and speaking back to the broader goal. And that may be something that you guys want to think about, to reduce the number of goals. Frankly, the amount of money the federal government gives you is sparse for a lot of goals. You know, I wish they
Yeah.
gave you 7 million too, but
I
you
do
may want
too.
to think about something like that, where your goal statement can encompass more than just one specific item, like healthcare or childcare or whatever it is.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe
Yes.
I'm not looking at this correct, but I'm only seeing 8 listed here. You all keep referencing 9.
Oh,
Where's the 9th?
There are 9 supported in the DD Act.
But I
I-
mean, in terms of
on the
this,
document.
on this document that we're talking about, I'm only seeing 8. So
let me see. I don't think you guys came up with any childcare goals or activities or targeted disparity. I think when we got talking about education and early intervention, that childcare
was
got
under that one.
got left off, correct?
Yeah.
So otherwise, childcare is the 9th area of emphasis.
I think that when we start talking about choosing what goals or what we should do, I just don't want any particular goals or any targeted disparity be left out. I think that the public has made it very clear that all of these goals are very important. We have had numerous meetings. We've heard a lot of discussion and recommendations from the public. So I just want to caution the committee as we decide to take goals and minimize the amount of goals, that we keep in mind to try to develop ways or develop goals, like Ms. Matney said, to make sure that these disparities are covered. So
And I agree with you, Madam Vice Chair. I definitely think all of the issues, as I said in the beginning, are incredibly important. Unfortunately, the task we have is making sure that we develop goals that we can meet, that are measurable and that can be met within the 5 years. And one of the things that we need to take into consideration is the fact that we are short-staffed and will be for at least probably the first year of this plan. And then once we have a staff in place that's a director who's permanent, they will have a period of, I would say, just from my own working in this work, probably 6 months to a year, they would need to get their self and their staff oriented to being efficient and being, firing on all cylinders, as it were. Because right now we have 2 major staff vacancies. And so we're asking a lot of our current staff as it is, and they have so far risen to the challenge, but we're all human. And I just want to take into account that all the goals are important. Everything we do is important and should be, we're accountable for. But, I want to make sure our staff is not overwhelmed, and I don't want to set our council or our community up for failure of these goals either. And so I definitely want us to take that into account as we look into these areas of emphasis and how we want to structure our goals. I think Ms. Matney gave some great advice in paring down the number of goals and then having those goals reflect, within them, these concerns we've definitely heard from the community and want to address. But I think it's imperative that we focus our energies because we have a limited budget and we have limited staff also. And I think it's only prudent as managers and leaders to take that into account as we develop this plan today. All right, and so the first goal we have, I'm looking at education. Okay, thank you. Health is our first goal. And so what areas of emphasis do we most want to see inside this area of our plan? You see the current goal listed before you and the recommendation.
I'm sorry. I think I might be misunderstanding. May I interject?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So are y'all going to decide on the number of goals and then we can decide what kind of language to create for those goals and then address areas of emphasis? Because right now what's on the screen are goals for each area of emphasis minus childcare.
Okay. Well, that's a question for the committee. How do you all feel we should do it? Courtney's recommendation is to decide on the number of goals we focus on and then to develop the goals and strategies within it. So is that a strategy that we're all comfortable with using?
I am.
Okay, Stephen, any other comments or feedback from the committee?
Randall.
Yes, Mary.
Randall, it's Mary. I, my memory is not as good as I would like to say, but I think that when we were coming up with this list originally, when we were at our meeting, when we were meeting face to face about it, we knew that we had taken off a big chunk more than we should have, I'm sure. And then I think we had another discussion about it at a later date. I know in our last meeting. So we've talked about these goals, while ambitious they are, gonna leave us probably with us not being able to do justice to every one of these goals the way they are now. So I liked the idea of looking at an overall goal and then putting some of the things together. Like if you look at employment, you might be able to put transportation in with employment because you're going to have transportation to get to employment. So maybe we could
Good
look
idea.
at these as bigger, you know, we can advocate for the recreation, you know, maybe it's putting one of these as an activity under another goal. And so you're still trying to do a little piece of some of these things, but you don't have a complete section dedicated just to that. And maybe we could get them down to three, you know, to three goals, looking at it that way. I mean, I haven't thought it all the way through, but that's kind of what I was
No,
thinking.
but I like where you're going. I like the general idea that we have three sort of overarching goals or areas of emphasis, if you will, and then within each of those three, try to incorporate as much of the objectives as we possibly can. That's feasible for us to. I mean, 5 years is a long time, but you also, I think it's important to be aware that you don't necessarily have to have a project completed in that 5 years. You can have a goal of something that might take 10 years to do, but you certainly want to work toward it in every way you can, while, you know, where it's possible. And so I think it's okay to put in things that we know, look, this is a long-term goal. This is something that may take, you know, the better part of a decade to do, but this is something we're passionate about. I think you can do that inside objectives of the goals. And that way you're not setting yourself up for failure either. You have measurable objectives you can reach within a time frame, but you're not having this enormous goal that you can't, like we're at point A and we're trying to get to point D in 5 years. You might not be able to, but you can certainly get far down the path and then have that reincorporate in your next set of 5-year goals too, if it's not complete. So I just want to make that clear. Like, we want to make sure we're doing things that systems changes, we all know, takes a long time. And so you want to include goals that, yes, you can certainly measure and reach within the 5 years, but then it's okay too to have a goal that we all might think, well, that may or may not happen in the 5 years, but we can put it in there and work toward it in every way we can and it carry forward.
So just looking real quick, I was just thinking like under community supports, that's the big title, community supports. And then under that, we could look at advocacy, housing, transportation, and recreation, and take pieces from there and put it underneath that category. And then have another category about education, and maybe health and education can go together. We can find a spot, decide where health should go. And then the last one would be employment. And those would be kind of like the 3 big pillars of things that we, want to look at: community supports, education, and employment. Those seem to be 3 major pillars for our DD community. And probably most of this stuff fits in one of those 3 categories. And so that's, I guess, what I'd offer up to have a discussion about.
I think it's a great idea. Does anybody else have anything to add or feedback they want to share?
Ms. Dejan has her hand raised.
Yes, Lillian.
I think it's really great that we're discussing, realistic expectations, because I know our council can be kind of ambitious at times. But when we're talking about making subcategories like under community supports, putting advocacy leadership under that, I'm not sure we're actually reducing the amount of work that we're committing to by making the subcategories. But rather, maybe we should focus on paring down the categories as a whole instead of just making the subcategories. I think it's a great, train of thought that we're trying to pare it down, but I'm concerned that our goal of less work, we're not actually getting there.
Very good point. Thank you. And I believe Michelle, I couldn't read all of Michelle's comment that she typed in. So if someone can see the chat box, I believe Michelle Gilroy had a comment.
Mr. Chairman, this is Michelle. I can just,
yes.
I can state it briefly.
Okay, great.
I have reviewed the other state plans, and while we were discussing the possible reduction of going from 9 to fewer goals to encompass the activities, but still make them more achievable. And Colorado has a really good plan with the goals outlined. It's a little bit older plan, but it's very clear and concise on the activity, the goal, and then the activities and objectives to achieve that goal. So if anyone would like to take a peek at that, it's a good resource to look at when creating one for us. We as a state unit do the same thing. We look at other states sometimes to see, especially if it's a new program or project, to look at other states to see how they've set their goals up, to see if it's comparable to our needs. And it makes it a lot easier and cleaner if that's something the council would like to do.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion.
I actually downloaded some plans from other states that had comparable federal allotments to Louisiana, because I wouldn't want to compare Louisiana to Texas or California.
Right. Their budgets are enormous. So is their staff. So yeah, it's
correct.
Thank
So
you for the comparable.
as far as state federal allotments go, I believe the closest to us would be Arizona. So if people would like to view that document, I've actually downloaded it and can share that on my screen. But before that, Ms. Tamisha Sonley has her hand raised.
Yes, Misha, you have the floor.
I just had a, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question, just to clarify, about the childcare. When we mentioned it, was that gonna be paired with education and early intervention? Or was childcare left off completely is what I wanna just clarify and make sure.
Correct.
Well,
During the meeting, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
During the meeting, you guys did not come up with an actual goal or objective specifically for childcare. However, it was included in the education and early intervention as the recommended targeted disparity.
And we can do so today, can we not? Even though we didn't reach that goal in the previous meeting, if we want to include childcare in the plan, we can do so today.
And also something else for you guys to consider. What I need this committee to are goals and objectives only.
Right.
Activities will be conducted or will be drafted by your federal 2022 planning committee. So
Yes.
this committee is just to determine goals and objectives and how they want these objectives to move through the next 5 years. So I would not focus on activities because that's not something that this committee is being tasked with determining.
Right. That's for a future committee to work on.
Correct.
Thank you for that point.
I'd like some time to look at and review the goals and objectives that Ms. Matney had shared with us, so we can consider some of these things, like y'all said, just looking at certain things that may, in fact, be in line with some things and the stuff also that Ms. Ryland provided as well.
Sure.
Before making a
Absolutely.
decision, so we can,
Well,
be able
we're-
to give a more, set of goals and objectives.
We're already coming up on the hour mark for our meeting, and we usually break every hour and a half. Would the committee like to take a 15-20-minute break to review plans and review all the data from these, and then reconvene in, say, 20 minutes? Is that something we'd like to do?
I mean, I recommend a shorter time frame than that.
Okay. So,
Maybe 10.
so 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something we'd like to do?
Mr. Chairman, this is Michelle. I think that would be a great plan.
Okay. So we will take it is currently 2:00. We will reconvene at 2:10. And again, we're taking a break to look over plans and to review our current plan before us. So we'll reconvene at 2:10. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's now 2:10. Courtney, do I have a quorum?
No, sir, we need a few more people to return.
Okay, we'll give it a few minutes.
Hearing that.
Okay, it's now 2:15. Are we still lacking a quorum?
I still need 3 more people to share their screens, 2 more people to share their screens. There we go. Yes, sir, you now have a quorum.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And so now let's continue with our work. Courtney, would you like to start us off?
Well, actually, I threw it back to you guys before we left.
That's true. Okay. So what's the feedback we have from our break? You know,
You can forward it, you forward it to Laura.
Okay.
Carbon copy me,
Okay.
Danielle.
Michelle, I think your mic is on.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so what ideas, what feedback do we have from our break where we looked over the plans? Anybody have anything they want to share? Do we agree that we will want to narrow down the goals to say 3?
Yes, I think that's what Courtney was asking us to do. She was actually asking us to narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4. Is 4 too ambitious, committee?
I think so. I think that's going to be a little bit ambitious because remember, we also have hurricane recovery going on for a quarter of our state as well. So, or more. So, that would be my recommendation. I think 4 is, I mean, that's the most I would go. But I think it might be a bit ambitious.
So it sounds like we're going with 3 because 4 is too ambitious. And so are we going to have some discussion about, what we are going to title these 3 to be?
If we agree that it's 3 that we want, then yes, that's our next discussion. So there's the committee in agreement that 3 areas of emphasis or goals are what we're looking at now. And you don't have to take my recommendation. It can be 4. It's just my assessment that 4 would be ambitious.
I agree, Mr. Chair, that I'm in agreement with the 3 as well.
Thank you.
In light of what is going on, I just want to also highlight what Dr. McKee said, that we just don't leave out any of the what she said, a reference to earlier, that we try to be as inclusive as we can with the goals and objectives.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking over Colorado's plan and also the other plan that was submitted on the break. I really like how those are structured inclusively to incorporate several different areas that we can, like you said, as much as we can, but also that way we don't leave out any disparities when we're looking at everything as a whole.
Absolutely. And thank you for that clarification. I agree with both you and our vice chair that we know the work is important and we want to get as much of it in our plan as we possibly can. And yet do so in a way, produce a plan that's productive and measurable and that is not overwhelming to complete. So with 3 goals, now the discussion turns to what are our main 3 goals?
I would like to consider safe and affordable housing as one of them.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Ms. Dejon has her hand raised.
Yes, Lynn, you have the floor.
I think that the goal under advocacy leadership of individuals with DD and their families having access to information and supports is super duper important. I understand our LACAN system is super robust, but the membership of individuals with disabilities participating in LACAN is strikingly low. And all of our LACAN leaders are also parent advocates. And so I think we need to refine our recruitment strategies for our advocacy efforts and advocacy trainings. And I think that's something we really need to focus on moving forward.
I agree with you. Thank you for that recommendation.
So Lillian, is your recommendation to make sure that advocacy leadership is a goal that we leave, is what you're saying? Could be the overarching that we decide to leave.
Yes, and specifically the inclusion of self-advocates as well. And as a subcategory, youth with disabilities, but I think focusing on the adult self-advocates is a more realistic goal before we try to start enlisting youth advocates as well.
Thank you.
And along those lines, thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Dejan. We are actually federally required to include specific items in our plan. So if I may, I'm going to try to share the screen and show you what is required. And if I can find that document, where did So in the plan from 2019 Arizona, the first 3 objectives, we are required to include this information in our plans. It's in the DD Act that this be addressed and included in our plan.
Thank you for that clarification, Courtney.
So Courtney, for clarity, are you saying that has to be included as one of our goals?
If
What
not,
you're showing on the screen?
not in its own goal like they have here, or like we have in our current plan, which is under advocacy, leadership, and development, it needs, these objectives have to be somewhere on our plan. So we have to fit these in somehow. So if we create a goal just for self-advocacy or advocacy leadership, this would be where we would comply with what's required by the DD Act. We would be able to house these 3 objectives within that goal. Does that make sense?
Got it.
Okay.
I know we generally measure like how many trainings we do. With those federally required objectives, is there a measure of our success rate with those from the past couple of years? Like, do we have a specific measure to kind of figure out specifically how we're involving these specific demographics, as far as like how well we increased participation from people with disabilities over, let's say, the past 3 years?
So a metric.
Yeah. Like, I know that they're required, but how do we measure those requirements and how we're fulfilling those requirements?
I believe that information and data is captured by council staff, and we try to report that in the status reports, the quarterly status reports, to let you know how many individuals are being affected by activities through LACAN and with Families Helping Families. Also, I want to say our very first activity is for People First, which is the self-advocacy network, to receive training or technical assistance. So we're reporting out exactly who's participating, or how many people are participating, I should say.
And Cheryl is also letting us know in the chat that there are federal reportings as well.
Yes, I think that's kind of more along the lines that I was looking for, like a broader overarching method.
Right.
Your answer does clarify a lot, and I appreciate it.
I have a question, maybe
Yes.
for Ms. Matney.
Ms. Sonia.
With her mentioning those federal performance measures, are those also, or where are those provided? Or are those one of those, I guess you could say, areas that the federal government kind of have not put out, or is that something that's accessible to the public?
They're accessible. I know they're on, and I'll put a link over on our, I'll put a link to a document we have on our TA website that will let you know what the measures are. But the measures, the federal performance measures do go after the self-advocacy participation and family member participation. And it also requires councils to talk about active involvement in advocacy. So some of it is participation in an activity, but then it drills down into some very sub outcome measures about, okay, so you trained somebody and gave them information. Did they become active in advocating either for themselves or for a system? It talks about, do they feel more confident after they, receive some training, especially on the three self-advocacy components, because what we want is to build self-advocates' knowledge, skills, and abilities to really speak up for themselves. So there's a number of measures under that. So Lillian, I think you'll find, I'll link over in just a second, but the federal measures really require councils to capture that information. And then they roll it all together for all 56 to report back to Congress.
Thank you.
And so it appears as
Okay.
though I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. It appears as though we are at
You have the floor, Madam Vice Chair.
it appears as though that we are at an impasse of some sort. Again, there's a lot of concern of us narrowing our goals down, because again, we know that these disparities exist and we don't want these disparities to continue. But it does sound like the committee has decided that we will, in fact, narrow them down to 3. And so, again, if that is is that a motion that I need to make that, and then get the motion seconded, have discussion, or where are we going at this point? We are at.
Well, what I was about to say is we need to decide if we agree that there will be 3 goals. Now we need to decide what those goals are. Once we decide that, then we can begin to look at all the disparities, which we know are important, and place them within the 3 goals we set. So now what we need to do is we need to decide what are our 3 main of focus, our 3 goals that are paramount for our council to work on.
So I've only heard 2 so far. Mr. Nguyen recommended housing and Ms. Dejan recommended advocacy.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we can, I guess I'm struggling with trying to make sure that all voices are being heard. I guess that we know, given what Courtney has just shared with us, that advocacy leadership is something that is a requirement based on what she's given. So can we all agree that advocacy leadership will remain? Now, what it would look like once we start to incorporate objectives under advocacy leadership, that's a different story. But can we all agree that advocacy leadership will remain as one of the 3?
Yes.
Is that a motion
Yes.
I need to make, Mr. Chair, or you just want to take the lead on this?
I mean, I don't think we really need, I think we're still in the phase where we can agree as a committee if we have a consensus that we now have 3 goals, and we've decided 1 is advocacy leadership. And so now you want to look at that goal. Let's go ahead and do our 3 areas of emphasis would be my recommendation. And then once we decide the three overall overarching goals, if you will, then we'll come back in and address the disparities that are needed and how they fit into the three overarching goals is what my recommendation would be. And then once we have that framework, then we can make the motion to adopt the work is what I recommend.
Mary Tarver mentioned earlier about, and she can jump in and correct me if I'm understanding this. She mentioned about incorporating employment and education. I didn't know if she wanted to incorporate employment and education together. Maybe Mary could offer some clarity on that. And then she also mentioned community supports as well. So Mary, was your recommendation to incorporate education and employment together, or can you bring clarity to that?
Yeah, I had just put community support and put advocacy, housing, transportation, recreation, kind of some of those things all in one bucket for us to figure out what we wanted the objectives to be. And then education and employment. But looking at these other plans, I think that the advocacy one could be one of the top, be the goal for the advocacy leadership, and some of these things that are required to go underneath there. We could still do community support then and put the housing and transportation and those things underneath that if we wanted, and then put education and employment together.
That's what I understood what you were saying. So we're looking at advocacy, leadership, education, employment together, and community supports. Correct, Mary?
I think so. I mean,
okay,
it's an idea, not open for discussion. Certainly open for discussion.
I happened to notice a trend, if I may speak, when I was drafting the language for the goals and objectives that you guys provided previously, that community supports and housing, transportation, and recreation all kind of had similar language, which was inclusive community living. So maybe having a goal to address inclusive community supports and living that can then have objectives over multiple areas of emphasis.
I like that, Courtney. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. We see some thumbs ups and smiles on that one. Thank
Is
you,
it too
Courtney.
late to consider health?
Oh, I haven't even started yet, Stephen. You must have was reading my mind. I'm gonna, Stephen, I think you're awesome, because I was gonna go right into that. I was waiting.
I was waiting for the vice chair to go into that.
We
I
are
don't know,
definitely
just
gonna try to
looking
fit
over
that in.
Just looking over this is just health is just sticking out, and
Uh-huh.
I'm sad that I never caught on until now.
Yes.
Well, would you want to include that as part of community supports and living?
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's a vital part of it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so I take it we have a recommendation for goals of addressing self-advocacy or advocacy leadership, a goal for education and employment, and a goal for community living and supports. I don't know that a motion is needed, but if there are any object.
I was gonna ask right now before we move forward, is everyone in agreement with those three being our overall goals? Is the committee in agreement with those three being our overall goals at this point?
What did y'all
Yes.
say? I'm sorry. Great. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. What did y'all say? Health was going to go under community living and supports. Was that right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So we're all in agreement that those are the three goals that we want?
Yes.
Okay. And so now we have to move into, now that we have our goals in place, now we have to look at where the disparities would fit, where our emphasis would fit for these, into these categories, these various categories of three, where all these other areas of importance fit now and how they best fit.
Can we start with community supports? Only because there's
Yes.
so many other goals that may fit under community supports if the committee is okay.
Yes, it's a very broad category. So yes, please do.
Can we have some discussion surrounding health being included in the community supports, under community support?
Ms. Sonia asked if that's where we were including it, and I said yes, but that's so far been our only discussion to that effect. I would welcome any discussion on the topic.
I'm noticing that the targeted disparity says that under health, individuals with BD who also have co-occurring mental health conditions will receive all appropriate healthcare services and receive treatment or services for all co-occurring conditions. I know that we had some discussion around working with OCDD as well as OBH. We have already started, I believe, having some discussion and also drafted a letter to them regarding this very disparity. That seems like
Yes.
we can put that under the community supports. And of course, I'm going to need support from the committee on this. And also include that the issue with the rural areas and access to individuals that are living in poverty. So it's almost like it's twofold. Individuals with DD with co-occurring conditions being serviced, but as well as individuals in the rural areas having access to those very same services. And so I think there's some kind of way we need to work on the language so that we can incorporate both of those, can address both of those disparities. You know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean.
So because again, we are talking about access, service delivery systems. Ms. Sonia, help me with this, because I know you're a medical professional. We're talking about access, we're talking about service delivery to the systems, increasing that access in the rural area.
Transportation.
Yes.
Transportation is a big part of that.
Yes.
Yes. Whether or not those communities are being served, equally. The populations of minority communities in reference to geographic locations, like you said, the rural communities, because sometimes, like you said, the travel is the one of the disparities, and also poverty, because we know with that, lack of jobs are also an issue in that area. So employment kind of can also go along with that as well as one of the issues to target also. I think part of the struggle is trying to develop a goal that will embody all the things that we're looking for.
That is,
Um,
yes.
and
Can't
that
the
I'm just
goal,
being honest, that's a struggle. But I'm trying to put something together to see how we could address that in an inclusive way.
so I'm wondering, are we right now trying to develop what the goal should read? Are we giving recommendations on what the goal should read right now?
Essentially, yes. We're trying to develop, we know what the overarching goal is. And so now we're trying to work on the language for what should go into the goal, what should be the emphasis, like we have the goal in place. And so now what areas of emphasis do we think need our most focus? And so we're trying to work on the language for those things, those disparities that we know that we've heard are a problem or an issue. And how can we best now word it so that we know and it's clear what the goal entails and what we are to do, the objectives for the goal.
So if we're taking recommendations for the goal for community supports, I was just hoping that the committee can look at the goal for community supports to include some of the language from the goal in health as well.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to do within this short period of time to be for the individual, including Muslim, will have access to quality supports and services, and then maybe we can identify what those supports and services will be by tying in the word affordable healthcare, preventative health services. You know, can we tie that language in that goal?
We certainly can.
Okay. And so maybe, and this is just to the committee, I know that we're right now trying to figure this out, to be fully participating members of the community, individuals with DD, including those with most challenging needs, and their families will have access to quality supports and services inclusive of affordable health care. And then we could start outlining other, you know, things we want to put in there. So I'm saying that right after quality supports and services, we can say inclusive of affordable healthcare and access to affordable healthcare services. I don't know if Courtney's typing right now. Try to put that in there.
You caught me.
It's okay. So we are trying to draft, right. So we are trying to put that, yes, great, Courtney. We're trying to take some of the language that's included in the health goal, incorporate it into community support. So we know that health is something that we want to put in that community supports. Now we can go on to have a conversation about what other goals that we have on here that we want to include on the community supports.
Yes.
And then to respond to what Michelle's recommendation is about, you know, making sure that the objectives and the activities align, which again, we will have at a different meeting. This committee is just trying to draft the goal. Because I think Michelle brought up a really good point about making sure.
She brought up a great point. She brought up a great point.
A great point. So I think affordable health care it would go in the goal, but then when we start talking about the activities, then we will outline preventative health and all of that, you know?
Yeah, so that will be the 2021 committee that will look at the activities and objectives in relation to this goal.
So now the conversation is what other goals that we want to include on the community supports now. So I've stepped up and put health. So I'm asking committee, hoping the committee can ask what other wording can we put in the goal under community supports?
Does anybody have any further suggestions of what areas of emphasis can go under the goal of community support?
Well, I mean, we can move the health underneath the big goal, or you're just starting all over typing, I guess was.
Yeah. Health is under the community supports, Mary.
Yeah, but there was a whole
under community supports
already, so I was just wondering if we were gonna keep, you know, on what we had community supports on there, and there was a goal and some objectives.
Right. Well, and that's what we're still hashing out is what we want the it to look like. What do we want the goal to look like we've created? So here, try to include as much of that language we already had
Right, okay. I'm just making
into
sure that's
the
what we're
overarching
reading.
objectives we add.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's what I would recommend we do.
Are there any other recommendations we can put under community supports? We have health now there. Are there any other ones that the committee sees that we can put under community supports?
I think the housing and transportation would be underneath that
I
section.
think it would best fit under this section.
Transportation and recreation, if we want to look at those.
Well, we certainly do. So that's a good idea. Thank you, Mary.
Hi, this is Chris. Just for clarification, are these under the umbrella of particular priorities, right? So it goes priorities, goals, objectives, activities. Is that right?
I believe you are correct, sir. Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are correct.
There is no order of priority. It's just a number of goals with their associated objectives and then activities.
Gotcha. So but we do have priorities, right, or no? Or am I interchanging the term priorities and goals?
The goal would be our priority.
I'm not sure if it's a ranking, Chris, you're asking, if it's first priority, second priority, or third, but I think they all carry the same equal weight.
They equal weight. If we make it a goal, it has equal weight, and then the goal is the priority. The 3 goal priority.
The priorities, okay.
And then within those 3 goals, we're saying these are areas of emphasis that we're trying to achieve. We're working towards achievement or improvement.
So I believe Mary said to add transportation and housing, and I know that Stephen had mentioned housing. He definitely wanted that to be considered. Are we
Yes.
adding transportation and housing to community living supports?
I would recommend that. Yes, I think it's where it best fits. If anyone disagrees with me, please feel free to interject. But I think this is the goal where that best fits, because all these have relation. I mean, if you can't get there, you can't participate. So transportation is important. Housing, obviously, I mean, to be part of a community is based on where you live. So I think they definitely fit.
I'm making adjustments to the document. Can you see it as I'm making the adjustments?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, recreation. Ooh, not too far. Okay, so since we used the community support goal, what objective would you guys like to have for that? What language would you like to propose for that objective, since we used it for the actual goal? And I'll never mind. So to me, the objectives that you guys came up with for community supports originally, these to me are more like activities.
Okay. Which
They
will
are
be
more like
useful,
activities.
which will be useful when we move to the planning phase later. But yes, I think we could need to rework our objective to reflect our new goal.
Okay. So how can we incorporate a statement that encompasses the direct support professionals receiving high quality training and adequate compensation and training for first responders? What kind of language?
Yeah, we're gonna have to try to reword that objective
Yeah.
to fit what we're
Yeah, we
trying to do
are.
now. That's a whole rewording,
Yeah.
Courtney.
Right.
Can we just get the goals done and come back to the objective?
Yeah, I think that would be best. Is to get let's not get too bogged down. Let's get the goals done and then
let's
come back
get
to the objectives.
let's get the goals. So we know community living supports is one. Our next one is self-advocacy and, well, I mean, advocacy leadership, correct, Lillian?
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't find my button.
That's all right. And so now let's go to that area and take a look, see if what can we fit under there from some of our other. The goal seems pretty sound. I don't know any other changes need to be made to that goal. Maybe I'm not looking at this right. Can we?
Looks good.
It looks good to me. Anybody feel free to put your feedback out there on it, but I think it actually works well as written.
No, don't do that. Sorry.
Yeah. What that looks like. All right. So now
You cut out there, Madam Vice Chair. What was that again?
I'm sorry, can we go to education and employment? We're just trying to work these goals out.
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
we'll come back to each one with objectives.
All right.
So how do we feel about this goal as far as how it's already worded?
It looks good, but we're probably going to have to do like what Mary talked about, incorporate employment in there in the wording.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
There we are. It's amazing what the word "and" can do.
Yes.
Wow. And that didn't take a whole lot of student loan repayment.
So are we feeling good about that rewording?
Yeah, it looks good. I'm hoping the committee's okay with it.
That's what I'm asking all of us. Are we feeling good about these goals and their wording?
Look good.
Okay.
If
Because
I
the next,
can, Mr. Chair.
yes, you have the floor. Ms. Summer,
I
you have the floor.
I would like to see if we could add childcare under, with education and employment. The reason I asked that is because childcare should be considered as if that's not covered for a lot of families and parents. And they can't have, it's hard for them to basically have employment. When we look at that as a whole, especially when we consider a lot of families having to work from home in these days and times. So childcare is an issue with employment. So I would recommend considering putting that along with that as well.
Sure, I have,
Under the
I
umbrella.
mean, that's a great suggestion. I have no objection to that at all.
So
I
let's
think that
scroll back
that's a
down.
good
Oh, great.
point.
So where would that be? Tamisha, where do you think we should put it at? What in the wording? Where do you think it should go? You want it to go access to quality? Where do you think we can put it? I mean, I'm in agreement. I'm just trying to see if we can
I would
word
say
it.
If I may,
access to quality education.
Courtney, do you have some
and
suggestion
childcare.
on wording?
I'm so sorry to interject, but because we're using this phrase all stages of life, I don't know that we have to specifically state childcare in the goal, but that can definitely be an objective.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Tamisha, to make sure that it's listed in an objective? Or what do you think? What's your thoughts? Do you want it to
read? Let me read this and then I'm gonna
Yeah, take a minute. We don't have to rush. Take a minute.
Let me see if my screen, I think it's cutting. Okay, individuals with DD will have access to quality education, employment, and childcare in inclusive environments throughout all stages of life. I think it would probably be rewording that too much.
See, is the issue individual disabilities and their families? Because see, you bring into the point that families need access to childcare. Isn't that the point you're trying to bring to as well?
Yes, but it's also when I look at it as education, because those siblings and those parents all need to be educated as well. Because we have to educate not just the person with the disability, but everyone around them, including their family. So I'm looking at it as the same with childcare and employment, because we all know when everyone is everyone understands what's going on with that individual has better outcomes. So it's the same thing with providing that child care to that household. Because when there's a struggle of a disparity with a family with a disability, we all know that the whole entire, family unit feels it, not just that person with that disability. Because, it requires all that. So embodying all that, I'm just thinking of it inclusively, looking at it in that way. So I think they all need education. They all need understanding what was required with employment. They all need understanding what's required with childcare. So I'm trying to think of a way that it could be worded to include the childcare, because I think just putting it in an objective, I don't want it to get lost. If you get what I'm saying, I don't want that to just be forgotten about. let me see, individuals will have access to quality education and inclusive environments. And unless there's a way we can put it in a parentheses with the stages of, let me see, throughout all stages of life. Because if we're looking at quality education and inclusive environments, would that also, I'm trying to see if there's a way to target that with the childcare environment. You get what I'm saying? Trying to see how that could be worded to include that.
If anybody has any if anybody
'cause
has any suggestions, feel free to interject with them.
I know what I'm thinking of, but I'm just not.
It seems like
I'm
the
not able to
stages of
do it.
life will cover childcare, but I understand you don't want it to be left out. So we have to
Right.
figure out a way to make sure that but it seems like just from reading that stages of life covers childcare. That's what it seems, but
It would, but I get Ms. Sonia's point that
Sonia's point.
it would get lost later, particularly, we understand today, but this is a 5-year plan. So you want to make sure that throughout its implementation and carrying it out, that her concern for childcare is known in the
But
goal.
we're still going to be working on the objectives and the activities. So
yes,
it will be included when you get to the next stage of the setting up the objectives and the activities. It'll stand a better chance being in its own little objective or activity than just it being specific in the goal.
I see your point. So you just saying it would be better to be put into the objective or as an activity when we get to that stage.
Are we doing objectives today as well?
How would you? Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Sonier, would you
Yes,
like
we
for
are.
us to make that an objective right now? Would you would you consider
Yes,
that and let
Well, let's put it this way. If we
Well, no,
go
we're
ahead,
doing that. We're gonna do that later, right?
we're doing activities later, we're forced to do the objectives today as per our chair.
yes.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I just don't want it to be left out. That's all.
It sounds like it would have some, I'm seeing some comments from our council members saying that the objective would have some strength as an objective. But I just want to make sure, Ms. Sonier, that your point is not, muted.
Thank you.
We can certainly commit to it being part of the objective. That's no problem. But the question I have now is, are we comfortable that these are our goals, and are we ready to move to objectives, or do we need to work more on our language with each goal before we move to objectives?
I think that the goals look well. I'm comfortable with the way the goals are written right now.
How's everybody else feeling? From our committee, how's everybody feeling about these goals? Any feedback?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. Stephen, how you feel about it?
I think we're cooking with gas.
Okay, Bambi, what's your take on it?
I'm good with it.
Okay. I hate to call everybody out, but I just want to be sure before we move into objectives that we have a consensus as a committee that we're good with the goals as they stand.
This is Michelle. I concur.
Okay. Thank you all. That was a lot of work. Thank you. All right, so now we'll move to objectives for each goal.
Which one are we working on first? Are we doing education and employment first?
We can do education and employment first. That's fine.
That's what y'all, I mean, I'm just asking.
We don't have to go in we don't have to go in a particular order. We can go with any of the three we agree to go with. So if education is the one we're ready to start with, that's fine. Mary, would you have any suggestions on the wording since that's your committee you're chair of?
I think that, Wanda had made a suggestion about putting safe in with education and employment, like they have access to quality education, quality and safe education or something, but I think that that's one of the things that we run into because we want to
Sure,
make sure.
that's
I think that's a good point.
absolutely, and thank you for that suggestion. And thank you, Ms. Corley, for that suggestion.
And then I think that we can look at putting something in about the child care, one of the objectives.
Yes. Ms. Sonia, do you have any suggestions on how the wording could go for childcare and the objective?
I'm coming up with something, sir.
Okay, we'll give you a moment. I'm in no rush. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak on that when you're ready.
Okay.
Can we say, I'm looking at parents of students with developmental disability, including those in underserved rural population. Do you want to make it as specific as that? And then say we'll have increased information to early intervention
But we certainly
services,
can.
planning or programming.
It's an important disparity, so I think to mention it would be perfectly fine.
So if we
in the
are
objective.
saying parents of students with developmental disabilities, including those who are in underserved populations, rural, either we could say underserved or underserved, sorry, y'all,
That's okay.
unserved populations and rural
Right.
communities.
Yes.
Inclusive of rural communities will have increased access to early intervention services, including childcare. You see where I'm going?
I do, and I like it. for urban and rural, Michelle is bringing
Yes,
up.
yes, Michelle, that's great. Absolutely. So yes, if we put for urban and rural in there as well, if we state it,
Well, the definition
Yeah.
of underserved and unserved population includes those in rural locations.
Right.
it does, and I agree, but I think oftentimes when we don't put the word rural
I
in,
I
those
think
people get left out.
yeah, I think they feel left out, even if
Uh-huh.
even, you know, and I think it's important that we put the rural in, because here
Word
again,
rural in.
we have a 5-year plan, and we know what we mean today, but we're not going to be here in 5 years. So we want to make sure that it's clear what our intention is.
Can, Mr. Chair, it looks like, Ms. Sanier wants to be recognized. And then
Yes.
also, can we give Michelle an opportunity to jump in, because she's pecking along in her chat box, and I think that if she had the mic, she could
Absolutely.
probably put some stuff in.
No, it's fine.
Go ahead,
That's
Ms.
a
Sanier.
great
looks like-
suggestion. Go, Ms. Sonia, you have the floor.
Oh, thank y'all. I just wanted to recognize and tell y'all I appreciate the fact that the word rural is put in there. Because just speaking from that aspect as someone in the community, people in rural areas tend to look at themselves as just part of the community. And so when we say underserved, some people may not look at it in that same aspect. So I think using the correct terminology, like you said, is urban or rural, is very important when we look at this as a whole, when we're developing these plans, to make sure that, also what Ms. Guillory had reference to, that we also need to put in minorities and Native American descents and all those populations, so we can label them correctly, because part of that is educating the public. Instead of us just using broad terminology, we need to state it for what it is, so people can understand and be educated in the proper way to know that we are targeting those disparities. Because we keep just using broad terms, people are just going to walk over it, and I definitely don't want that to happen.
I agree with you, and although we do want to use broad terms so that we have it's not 50 pages long, but what we do want to make sure of is that everyone knows when they read about targeted disparity, you might not know, if you're not in government, what that means exactly. You may not know that it encompasses you when in fact does. And so I think it's very important we acknowledge groups, rural and urban and ethnic and whatever else that is important to us, that we acknowledge it and we list it properly, so that people do know when they read our documents that, hey, I'm represented here and I'm important. So thank you for bringing it up.
This is Michelle. May I speak for a moment?
Yes, Michelle, you have the floor.
Okay, I just wanted to say, sometimes I send things in chat because I tend to ramble too much whenever I talk. So that's why I send it in chat. But in our state plan, when we have to do our federal funding state plan, it's a 4-year plan. And you have to be cognizant of the rural, the minorities, the underserved, the Native American piece, because that is a very, very big buzzword with the federal partners. But you also have to look at the economically challenged. That's another buzzword that they like for us to identify, the economically challenged. And those would be your low income or the ones that would be like SSI, Medicaid eligible, and so forth. So those are some words that we may want to include in some of our goals and objectives, because those are things that have been identified with our state plan and that we have had to use because they're identifying factors with ACL. So with that being said, I just wanted to put those out there for y'all to use if you choose to. And like I said, I put it in the chat because I tend to ramble too much.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for the suggestion. So is that something we want to add to the language of the objective? The economic piece.
I think it's good. I mean, Michelle made a good point. I mean, if that's the language that's actually being used in federal reporting, I see no issue with that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm only speaking from, I mean,
Fine.
it gives a clear picture.
No, I understand. Yes, absolutely. I understand. I'm just trying to discern if we want to take our suggestion. And obviously you and I are a yes. And so how does the rest of the committee feel about adding the language for
Is the
economic
language, Michelle,
disparity?
economically disadvantaged or challenged?
In our state plan is
Gets
economic
challenged.
challenged, because that could be someone who has a reasonable amount of income, but still has difficulties meeting the day-to-day challenges with a child with a disability. So you could have a good job and have a
Right.
great income, but still be challenged to meet the needs of that child or the family unit.
Sure.
That's why I said
Believe-
low
Yeah,
income
challenged, I
or
think,
economic.
is the most
Low
inclusive.
okay, so low income or economically challenged. That's
Yeah.
the wording. Got it.
Challenged. Correct.
And which other qualifiers would you like to add?
Committee? Does anybody have any qualifiers they want to add? So we like what we see for this one.
It looks like Ms.
If I
Sonia has her
may
hand to be
say something,
recognized.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Sonia, you have the floor.
When you asking about, are you asking about also the objectives? I'm sorry, about this,
Yes,
the one we're talking about, or you want to, or something to change with this first statement?
We're looking at this one, and then we'll move to the next two.
Okay.
So how do we feel about this objective or for this goal? So we like the language, no additions.
I have a
I agree with
suggestion.
Yes, sir, Stephen.
Would it be appropriate to put English as a language, ESL, English as a second language, or something along those terms?
Sure. It would be appropriate if the committee is in agreement. Does everybody like Stephen's suggestion? And I believe Ms. Corley had the same suggestion, did she not? Thank you, Courtney. Is everyone good with the wording for this objective?
I think it's
Any
good.
other additions we need to make? Again, is everyone good with the wording for this objective? Any further additions needed?
Mr. Chair, it looks like you have some comments in the comment box.
Could you do me the favor of reading them, sir?
Let's see. Comment, please add English language learners from Miss
Okay.
Corhonda, Miss
That's
Lillian
done.
Dejan.
Okay.
The goal looks really good. And
Thank you,
also from
Lily.
Miss Corhonda, please add low incident disabilities as well as CVI, switch users, etc.
Incident disabilities and CVI switch users. Okay, how's everyone feel about that language for this objective?
Mr. Chair, could we also add the area of childcare in there? Because I think with those in here saying we'll have increased access to early diagnosis, identification of needs, childcare can be added to that, and early intervention services. If we're able to add that also.
We certainly can.
You saying access to early childcare to go first or early, in what order, Ms. Sonier?
Early diagnosis, identification of needs, childcare, and early intervention services. Long as it's fitting there somewhere, because I think it kind of goes along with that subset. Because childcare is also involved along that, that area of usually during that time and that process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we good with the wording for this objective?
Yes, so we still have another one to do for
Yes.
employment.
Yeah, you're right. So we're ready to move to the employment piece? No?
Okay, I saw something. It says individuals with DD will have increased opportunities to participate in inclusive post-secondary educational programs. Will that be under employment or in education?
That would be education.
I think it would too, so
So what I've got check marks next to are more like activities.
activities, okay, good. All right, great.
Yeah, so we'll get to that with the 2021 meeting. Today, we're focused on objectives.
If that's the case, it looks like the goal, if you can you scroll up a little bit, Courtney? Go back up. Yeah. Oh, okay, I see. No, that's where we ended that one. Okay, all right, no problem, no problem. Looks like the one where it says individuals with DD will have increased employment opportunities from employers who are educated on how to support. Maybe if we can take that one and then start wording that as a goal. I mean, as an objective. Sorry, it's getting late. Like if we could start with that one and then
That is
start
the
squeezing
objective
things in.
from there.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. Got you. Is everyone okay with that language? Do you like that idea?
Maybe we can take some stuff out the other two and start with that one. And
Okay, so how are we feeling about this one, y'all? How's this objective looking?
individual development disabilities would have increased access to employment opportunities that include pre-employment training provided services provided from highly qualified support providers. Individual DD will have increased access to employment opportunities and hold on, I'm thinking out loud. Hold just. Individual DD will have increased access to employment opportunities, inclusive of pre-employment training provided from highly qualified support providers. Highly qualified, yeah, supportive provider. Individuals have increased access to employment opportunities, inclusive of services. From highly qualified support providers and increased opportunities from employers who are educated on how to support people with developmental disabilities. It's too many ands, but you know what we're trying to say?
Yes.
It's too many ands. Can we, and I know we have to put the pre-employment training in there somewhere.
We can have multiple objectives.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Stephen, you have the floor.
Should we maybe put in the word competitive employment?
Good point.
What you think, Mary, about that goal? I know Stephen brought up about adding competitive. What do you think so far where we are with that employment? Because I know you and I, well, sit on that committee.
Yeah, I know. I know that it's been challenging this year since the COVID stuff. Some of this may have to be, I don't know if it's more of a activity or not, but you know, more access to computer and technology so that people can participate might have, that might be an activity instead of an objective.
I think it should be a main
I think some of
activity.
this is, I do think that it is sometimes education and employment are depending now on whether or not they can have technology to help them because they can't go to wherever it is that they're trying to do the education.
Right.
I think we have employment opportunities in there too many times. We have the word opportunities in here too much. So we have to figure out how to.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of great words in there. I mean, the thing that the disability community, I think, kind of more broadly has been very focused on is just the term competitive integrated employment, which is defined in the Workforce and Innovation Opportunity Act, which encompasses, I think, a lot of the things that we have in here when we talk about competitive wages and self-determination and things like that. I don't know if you wanted to make it more simple and just put that term in there or keep the more descriptive way that we're doing it.
It seems like you and Stephen both are leaning towards the word competitive. So maybe we should consider having the word competitive in this goal. You both brought it up.
This is Bambi. I don't think we can have a goal without having competitive integrated employment. I mean, that's standard language.
I agree with you.
So let's put
I
it
agree
in.
with you, MB.
I mean, if let's put it in there.
So this is the goal right here. What we were working on was the objective.
I mean, objective, that's what I
working on
mean. Let's put it in objective.
We meant
Yes,
the
Okay,
objective.
okay, I'm sorry.
we meant the objective because we've already done the goal.
The goals are set. We're talking about objectives. So if we say goal, we mean objective, Courtney. It's getting late and everybody's tired. Is everybody good with the wording of that objective that you see in green there? Do we need to add anything more to it? So we're done with this objective, right?
If we add
Correct.
something about transition from secondary educational settings, then that would encompass everything that was previously listed.
Well, let's do that. So how are we feeling about the goal? Oh, excuse me, the objective. How are we feeling about this objective? Any further additions?
Seems good. It's just that we need to make sure that when we move on to another objective, we include post-secondary education opportunities and, but no, I think, I'm sorry, that's gonna be an activity. I'm sorry, Courtney. You did say that would be an activity. My
It's going to
apologies.
be an activity, yes. So again, I ask, is everyone good with the objective?
Yes.
Let me hear a few more yeses. Okay,
Yes.
all right. So we have no objections to the objective. Any more additions before we move forward? Do we have anything in the chat related to this?
Mr. Chair, there's comments in the chat from
Okay.
Ms. Rhonda Corley.
Could you read those for us, please?
Yes, sir. She asked, can we add transition to secondary education as well? I'm considering those that actually attend a regular secondary educational center.
Would that be an activity?
I think it might be. Courtney, what's your feeling about that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that for me, please?
Miss
I
Sonia,
heard
can
something
you
about secondary education
can you
settings.
reread that, Miss Sonia?
Okay. Ms. Corley asks, can we add transition to secondary education as well? I'm considering those that actually attend a regular secondary educational center.
Okay, I believe we just added that, transitioning from secondary educational settings.
Okay, so that's been done. Okay. Is that all we have in terms of the chat?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add? I think we all are in agreement that goal is that, excuse me, that objective is set. So now now we're on to self-advocacy and advocacy leadership. So what objective do we have here? Thank you.
Okay, Lillian, we're gonna tap on your expertise with this one. Hope you're still online.
Yeah, I'm still online. I just had my camera off for a little while. I think it's really important to specify training more youth with disabilities and having more youth programs, but also, like I said earlier, getting more adult self-advocates involved, because our participation in LACAN and partners in policymaking too, as far as self-advocates go, are really significantly low. So I think specifying those 2 points is very important.
Thank you, Lillian.
The objective as written, it looks like it's written pretty well. Do you think we need to include something else in there? Are we missing something that's highlighted in green? But I mean, what's your thoughts?
I agree with you. This is Chris. I think it's really well written.
Lillian, how do you feel about it?
Does look really inclusive. I know that I think in the document that Ms. Cheryl shared earlier, I'm trying to find it, excuse me, with the state plan goals and objectives among the different states and the 5-year plans, there was underneath the targeted disparities, the different targeted disparities, youth was one of them. So I think the whether we want to specify that or not, this objective already looks super inclusive, like you're saying. We can specify youth, or we could not. I mean, it may be semantics at this point.
Lillian, we can make sure to include activities with youth, or I can make sure that that recommendation gets to the next 2022 Planning Committee for an activity to be created.
Let's do that for sure, Courtney. Let's do that for sure. Let's make sure the 2022 committee knows that youth activities are important in their planning process.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are we all good with the wording for this objective?
Courtney, can we go back under self-advocacy and advocacy leadership, the way it was originally written? Maybe I can pull my personal one up. So I want to make sure we include everything that was, I may have my personal one already pulled up. Yeah, that's the one. I was trying to see that we have everything in there. Okay, yeah. Looks like we had everything covered in there. Okay. Great.
So again,
So-
this one, we need to make sure that we address the self-advocacy network being provided assistance, that individuals with developmental disabilities have opportunities to advocate and lead other individuals with developmental disabilities, and that opportunities for cross-disability and cultural diversity are implemented. So those are some more things that need to go underneath this goal.
Let's add them in.
Okay. So I'm actually gonna just take the language from our current plan and just drop it in there. So if y'all just give me a few minutes to get that documentation ready for you.
Okay.
In the meantime, if Ms. Cheryl Matney wouldn't mind addressing what's required of councils for reporting purposes for targeted disparities that are identified.
So I put you guys a link to a document that we provide on targeted disparity from our website. And just as a reminder, everything we write is fully approved by your funding source. So this is what they've approved as instructions and guidance to councils. But, you know, sometimes when we talk about targeted disparity, we're talking about anybody who is from the unserved, underserved, descriptors, everything that we've already talked about. When we talk about targeted disparity regarding a council state plan, it does need to meet certain criteria. And so, of course, we're talking about a subgroup of people within the broader intellectual and developmental disability population. And then you guys are asked to identify a disparity, which you have identified many disparities, but you're asked to identify a disparity for a subgroup of people in your state and work towards decreasing that disparity. And the funding source is going to look at your whatever you label as your targeted disparity objective. And you are required to have at least one. But if you have more than one, they're looking for the same criteria on all of them. So as you're planning and you're continuing to plan, just remember through the lens of when a reviewer looks at your plan to approve it, they are going to be looking that you can, you know, your item on the disparity is clear, that you are it's really a statement. It's not really as simple as an objective. They're looking for a targeted disparity statement. And also, and I know it's not your job, but at your council, the next phase is all of these activities. For the targeted disparity item, you have to enhance your evaluation on that activity because you are absolutely tracking what the impact of that activity was, how much you reduced a disparity, and it's a much higher level evaluation. So just bear in mind as you guys, when you get down to price tagging your plan, you will want to put some resources, additional resources on your targeted disparity item or items so that you can absolutely meet the test that the federal funding source is looking for. So we recommend, even if, I know if you guys have kind of looked through that other document, you will see that California, for example, infused outreach to diverse populations in every single goal. But they selected one item to really affect change for under targeted disparity. So, and that way it didn't lock them down on because the state frankly is huge. And so, you know, you do want to think about, can you really do more targeted disparity items? You can still accomplish all of the expectations around outreach, prioritizing diverse populations, people who use assistive technology. You can prioritize populations of people and then really have a very tight targeted disparity element that meets the requirements that your funding source is looking for. I hope that makes a little bit more sense. Nobody's trying to restrict how much you do on diverse populations, but thinking about it in terms of operations, you want to make sure you can afford to do that higher level evaluation of targeted disparity elements if you're tagging them as such.
Thank you for that clarification, Cheryl, and that information. So we're still waiting on Courtney to finish with the language she's inputting into our objective. Does anybody have any discussion on what Cheryl just told us? Okay, so this is our newly worded objective. Let's give everybody a moment to read it, and then I'll ask for feedback.
The bullet points are the objectives, the check marks are activities.
Thank you for that clarification, Courtney. So committee, how are we feeling about this one?
So it looks like we're starting off with individuals with developmental disabilities and family members of individuals with developmental disabilities will have support to be effective leaders in systems change through participation on a variety of boards and commissions, self-advocacy networks, and be provided opportunities that are designed. No, that's the activity. Okay, so forget all that.
Right.
And then when I say change through participation on a variety of boards and commissions, and self-advocacy networks. Individuals with developmental disabilities and family members of individuals with developmental disabilities will have support to be effective leaders in systems change through participation on a variety of boards, commissions, and self-advocacy networks. Thank you for that comment too. A requirement to support support advocates should be trained to lead self-advocates.
Yeah, there's 3 distinct things you must do. They could be viewed as activities. So if you wanted an objective that really strung it all together, you know, like the first bullet will be supported in self-advocacy, the network, or Louisiana Self-Advocacy Network will be supported. You could just do commas, you know, provide supported or provide leadership training opportunities and participation on boards and commissions. Most councils go really, really simple with this one because you're required to do all 3 activities every single year of the state plan. So the objective is, it is what it is. It's, the law requires it.
So where it says we'll have support to be effective leaders in systems change through participation on a variety of boards and commissions, is that what we want to include? Self-advocacy training? Is that what you're saying, Cheryl? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, I even think you could go to the very first bullet and just after in systems change advocacy, comma, you know, because you're talking about the
Okay.
network will be supported in self-advocacy training and in systems change advocacy and participation in boards and commissions. And then
Got
it is, that's what they're looking for, is all
Okay.
3 wrapped in one.
Okay.
So are we all comfortable with the language of this objective?
Hold on. I think Courtney's still trying to add some stuff from that second bullet.
Okay. But I just want people to be mindful of it, to keep looking at it.
Yeah. This weekend, a variety of voting. Okay. What happened to the what we were reading? Courtney, where's the one we were reading? We missed a whole lot of. Did it go away? Louisiana Southern will be supporting self-advocacy training, systems change advocacy, and through participation in a variety of boards and commissions.
Right, Ms. Matney had just requested to consolidate all that in.
Okay, that's fine. I was just saying that. So this is the one we're going with. Okay. I thought all right, got it. Got it.
So is
Thanks.
everybody good with? Okay. So is everybody good with the wording of this objective in green? I'm
we want
assuming
it to just-
silence is a yes.
Do you want it to just state Louisiana Self-Advocacy Network? Do you want to include others?
You could just be broad, like our self-advocacy network can stay, and then say as well as partner groups. Is everybody okay with that objective? The wording you see in green is our current objective.
Looks
Is everyone
good.
okay? Okay.
That's great.
Is everybody good with it?
Looks
I'm
good.
gonna assume, okay,
Yes.
all right.
I have a comment.
Yes, Lillian, you have the floor.
I'm not sure if this is a comment, an objective, or an activity, but I think it's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about training individuals with disabilities and family members of individuals with disabilities that we have the people who are giving the presentations, we have a broad variety of types of people. So we have, like, let's say, trainings put on by professionals, some by parents, and some by self-advocates. Because, for instance, in our Partners in Policy making program, over the past 3 years, we've had a total of 50 presenters, but only 4 of those 50 were self-advocates. So having trainings presented by a diverse group of people is going to be super important for advocates to understand the system as a whole. So I just think that's something to keep in mind.
Thank you. It's definitely something we can work into our objectives for sure with this goal. So how's everyone feel about the objective?
Good.
So we're all good with this objective. We're ready to move to the next.
You just have community supports left.
Yes. So we do have some existing language from the last meeting we can start with like we did the other two, or?
We
Do we
used
need-
that for the goal.
That's right, that we sure did, didn't we? I knew there was something different about this one. Okay, so our objective has to be new here then. All right, so do you have some ideas, Courtney or Cheryl?
What you guys previously decided was to address direct support professionals and first responders. So I don't know how to come up with a statement that encompasses that both of those entities.
I see your dilemma there.
This is why I don't know how this is gonna be tough to make it first responders and direct support professionals under this. Hmm.
If I may interject, could we come up with an objective and then
That's
target
that's
the DSP, sorry, the direct support professionals and the I guess yes, said law enforcement or first responders
first responders.
as activities, and then that way we can get a more inclusive objective as a whole. Something to the fact of individuals with disabilities will have access to, let's see, I just seen it.
With community supports
Mhm.
that include, and then say what it is. What you
Right.
think?
Right.
Yeah.
What you think, what you think, Tamisha? I just,
I think that
I'm sorry. I
good.
just,
That's a start. That's a start, and then we can build from there. Let me see. Did Courtney? Did you type? Well, I'm trying to see where it says so I can.
I think Cheryl just put in the chat box a
she put a
suggestion.
good one in the chat box. Yeah, let's see what that one is. I just saw it.
Let's share that. Maybe that'll help us out.
Maybe Cheryl can say it. Can we allow her to speak it
Yeah,
out while Courtney
Cheryl,
can
go ahead
type
and
it?
just tell us what your suggestion here
I
was.
was on a Virginia council call, and one of the ladies just put stuff in the chat box, and it's just a thought to start. Individuals with DD and their families, I needed to include that, will have increased access to qualified, trained professionals, including direct support professionals and first responders. So well, this is terribly worded, so that they are supported in their communities. I mean, if the goal is to have increased access to qualified, informed people, I was just trying to throw some stuff for a start.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
That helps us a lot. So Courtney, did you capture that?
She did.
Will have access. Will have access. Yeah, to qualified trained professionals. Yep. We'll Cheryl says serve by and
Aye.
access, both. First responders. Qualified professionals, I guess. Yeah.
Okay,
Mary
Mary's
says she needs
leaving
to
us.
leave. Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah. Okay. Bye, Mary. Thank you for today.
Bye, Mary. I
Bye.
have to jump off in 5 minutes too, but I'm gonna stay.
Yeah,
until-
we're all, I think we because we're 11 minutes over time. So bearing that in mind, hopefully we can get this one done, wrapped up fairly quickly.
Courtney,
we're
can
all,
we, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Yes.
Can we spell out
Latonya.
the direct support professionals for DSPs for the public so they'll know? I'm
Right.
sorry, no, after professionals, including DSPs, is in the above, in the section of community. There you go. Thank you.
So how do we feel about the wording?
Can we add as an activity, improve resource database of community supports available across various service delivery systems? We had that in our last discussion, and I think that's important. To have an improved resource database of community supports. Across various service delivery systems. Thank you.
So are we all good with the goal for community supports? I mean, not the goal, the objective. I'm sorry, it's late. Are we all good with the objective for community supports?
I just want to make sure that the yellow highlighted language is what you guys want to include, or if I need to make any changes to that.
I think you could just take out appropriate, just saying other professionals. I don't know if appropriate needs to be in there, but. I guess for inclusive community living or to promote inclusive community living.
Maybe to promote and value inclusive community living.
Value and promote would be the way I would put it. So are we all good with this language?
Yes.
Any more additions?
Okay.
So
So-
we're all good with the language for this objective for community living and supports. I'm sorry, the goal. Courtney, you're gonna have to forgive me. It's a long day. Are we all good? Any more additions? Okay, Michelle concurs. Does anybody not agree? Is there anything we need to add? We'll put it that way. I'm gonna assume the silence is agreement. So Courtney, do we have, this is all we need to do today, correct?
I believe this is all we have time to do today.
Correct. Correct. That's what I was getting at. Is there anything else you need from us today? Put it that way.
There may be other things that need to be addressed later. I'm going to get with Ms. Matney to see what gaps need to be filled or what holes need to be filled. If she has seen any in the documentations from today.
Okay.
I think this accomplished a lot today.
Okay. Thank you all. And so if you don't need anything else from us today, then I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, before you do that,
That's what I'm asking you. What do you need?
so during the October full council meeting, this needs to be presented and voted on by the full council. So you'll need a motion for this to be presented to the full council.
Okay. Who wants to make that motion?
see.
I will make that motion.
Stephen makes that motion. Do I have a second to the motion? Stephen's motion for this to be voted on by the full council at the October 2020 meeting.
Lillian's hand
This
is
is
raised.
Chris. I can second that.
Lillian,
Yes,
you
I'll
have the
second.
floor. Okay, Chris, I believe seconded, but before I accept that, Lillian, you have the floor.
I was just saying that I would second it, but since Chris
Oh,
is already,
okay,
sorry, my bad.
okay, all right, it's okay. Okay, so we have a motion from Stephen and a second from Chris for this to be voted on by the full council at the October 2020 meeting. Do I have any abstentions to the motion? Do I have any objections to the motion? Hearing no objection, the motion carries. Thank you.
It looks
Okay,
like Rhonda's hand is raised if you're ready for public comment.
I was about to call for public comment. So if you could read Ms. Caranda's comment, or if she wants to address, she can at this point.
Great afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. To be honest with y'all, I forgot what I was actually gonna say. My hand was up so long ago that I
I
really
apologize.
forgot. That's no problem at all. Long as we were getting the business done, which was a great thing for me. Long as we were getting the business done, I didn't mind waiting at all. I am so happy that we actually have a meeting where we actually got business accomplished. And I thank y'all so much for actually representing the actual rural communities and the minority populations that are often forgotten about. I would have greatly appreciated if we could have actually written something in to address like legalities, such as like how I know that would have kind of been like in the arena that Chris could have actually helped with writing a target for, so that our people with disabilities can actually receive proper and adequate services when it comes to pursuing litigation, because they're not getting proper and adequate representation when they try to get litigation for things that are actually happening to them, such as living in a poorly accustomed house that is not handicap accessible. If they need to sue that landlord, who do they contact? You know, it's only certain cases that the Disabilities Advocacy Center actually tackle, and it would have been nice if our DD Council could have actually addressed that in our target. I don't know what category that would have fallen
Well,
under, if that would have been advocacy or something, but it would
Well,
have been great.
I want to remind you, we actually do still have a meeting that will determine the, help me here, Courtney, the word just escaped me. We'll be determining the objectives for today, and then the plans will be written as far as what we carry out for the 2022 meeting. And so that'll be something we can certainly still look at when the
Okay.
2022 committee gets together. So it's not over with today.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to say that. And also, if we can, during the next meeting, if we can address like early steps, not providing some of these rural and minority populations with services as well as a target, that would be nice.
It's on the record. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have any other comments? Hearing no other comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
I'll make a
motion to
motion.
adjourn.
Stephen,
Sorry, go ahead.
you have a motion? Ms. Sonia, would you second Stephen's motion?
Second Stephen's motion.
Thank you. And I assume there's no objections. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your work. Thank you to the public for your attendance today, and everyone have a great day. We are adjourned.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.